So how can we do it better? How can we do it better? Yeah, that's a question I ask a lot. How can we do it better? How can I do it better? I have this thing about me where even if something is good, I feel like it can always be better. And so I ask that question and I kind of ruthlessly evaluate things, sometimes ad nauseum. But I need to know how it can be done better. How can we reach our goals better, more efficiently, more completely? What needs to be done to make it better? And this is a pretty common phenomenon. There's a lot of tips going around right now, and they're called life hacks. Everybody say life hacks.
Life hacks.
Yeah. Essentially, you're trying to hack life, trying to find a quicker, streamlined, easier way to accomplish everyday tasks. Thanks to Tripp and Tyler, they gave us some very helpful tips. And the Apostle Paul actually does the same thing. He gives us some life hacks. So we're going to be in Acts chapter 21, at the end of 21, into 22. So if you want to travel with me, you're welcome to do that. If you want to follow through with this journey, please join me in that. If not, I guess you can do something else. But we're going to go through Acts 21, and we're going to talk about some of these life hacks that Paul utilizes in order to make life better. Now, he used them primarily for a defense for the gospel, in explaining how Jesus is the Christ and how that fits in with everything. But these things can be applied across the board in a lot of different areas of life. So even if you're not, pounding the pavement or sitting up here in the front of church with a microphone or talking to a friend about your faith, these tips, these life hacks can be used in just about anywhere. Are you ready? These won't be nearly as helpful as the bagel or the cupcake, but we'll see. The first one is that Paul used his manners. He used his manners. Okay? Acts 21, starting with verse 37. Now this is right after Paul has come to Jerusalem. Doris read a little bit just now. Paul's coming to Jerusalem. He knows there's going to be a lot of hardship. He knows there's going to be a lot of trouble. He knows there's going to be a lot of struggle. And yet he's made that courageous choice that even though there's going to be pain and hardship and struggle, he's going to step into it. He's going to do what God has commanded him to do. So he gets to Jerusalem, and there's all this hubbub, a lot of shouting, a lot of false accusations and assumptions, and Paul is being beaten. Eventually, Rome intervenes. They take Paul away so that they can have sort of a more private conversation. Verse 37, as the soldiers were about to take Paul into the barracks, he asked the commander, "May I say something to you?" "Do you speak Greek?" he replied. "Aren't you the Egyptian who started a revolt and led 4,000 terrorists out into the desert some time ago?" Paul answered, "I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no ordinary city. Please let me speak to the people." Having received the commander's permission, Paul stood on the steps and motioned to the crowd. When they were all silent, he said to them in Aramaic. Now, I don't know if you caught it, but Paul used his manners pretty well here. I mean, think about the situation that Paul is in. He comes to Jerusalem after all of these years. He has accomplished so much in these 20 or so years since he started on this faith journey. He's traveled all over the Mediterranean area, and he's planted churches, and he's influenced believers, and he's changed people's lives. He's been in and out of prison, falsely accused, and he just gets to Jerusalem. People are beating on him. I don't know if you've ever been in a fight, but it's hard to focus that way. I mean, I would assume. I don't know. But some of you actually believe that. So it's hard to focus. And so Paul, in the midst of all this, the Roman soldiers pick him up. They got to carry him up the steps on the way back to the barracks. He doesn't know what's going to happen. And he says, "May I speak to you, please?" "May I?" Okay. Normally this is the part where people are shouting and begging for their life. And, "May I speak to you?" And the soldier's surprised. He said, "What, you speak Greek? I thought you were the Egyptian that led 4,000 terrorists out into the desert." And I can just imagine Paul's like, "No, I'm not an Egyptian who led 4,000 terrorists out into the desert. That's somebody else." You see, what happens is chaos ensues and everybody jumps to conclusions. We make snap assumptions about people, and this soldier assumed that Paul was this kind of dreaded terrorist, and that's why people were all excited. He says, no, I'm not. I'm a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, citizen of no ordinary city. And then Paul says, please let me speak to the people. There are those manners again. May I? Please? So, the Roman centurion says, sure. He lets Paul turn around and address this rioting crowd. And also, at the very end of verse 40 there, you'll see that Paul speaks in Aramaic. Now, we talked a little bit about the importance of speaking in someone's language so that they understand you. That's called being considerate, right? For instance, if I stood up here and spoke in Greek the entire sermon, it might be interesting for the first 2 minutes. After that, most of you would get a glazed over look, or you'd just walk out. Right? Yeah. The rest of you would pretend like you knew what I was saying and go, oh, yeah. Oh, kairos. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll see it. Oh, I'll see it. I'll see it. Yep. But you have to speak someone's language. You have to come to their level. You have to feel what they're feeling and speak what they're speaking so that you can communicate. And that's what Paul did. Using our manners is such a huge part of what it means to be human. But it doesn't always happen that way, does it? Manners are almost extinct, unfortunately. We caught part of the debate the other night. And normally I don't get up here and profess any political views, and I won't tonight, but the candidates who impress me the most are the ones who don't treat each other like crap. Can I say crap on a Sunday morning? I mean, all it takes is a little human decency, right? We're trying to teach Parker manners. And he's getting there. You know, we're trying to do the simple stuff. We're saying, okay, buddy, do you want something? Like he'll say, chocolate treat. Chocolate treat. You want a chocolate treat? Okay. And you say, please? Please. And now, before he could actually speak real well, we wanted to try and get this across too. And so we'd say, please, and he wouldn't actually say it, but he would give you a kiss instead, which I thought was much better. And so now, sometimes if you're lucky, okay, buddy, can you say please? He'll go, please, and you'll get a smooch too. So, that's a win-win. So we're trying to teach him to say please. We're trying to teach him to say thank you. So when we do hand him something, he doesn't actually, we won't let it go until he says thank you. You say thank you. You're welcome. And then he waddles off happy as can be. Now the cool part is, because we've been doing this, it's gotten to the place now where Parker will sometimes, not always, nobody's perfect, sometimes say it on his own. Right? We don't have to beg him to say please and thank you, but sometimes if he really wants something bad enough and he's excited, Dad, please, chocolate treat. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome. Now here's the thing about manners, right? Behavior doesn't matter if character isn't changed. Behavior doesn't matter if character isn't changed. I know that's a double negative, but I don't care. Behavior doesn't matter if character isn't changed. What that means is, if Parker says please and thank you all the time, but he hasn't developed a heart of humility and respect, then we've failed in our quest to teach him manners. If we tell Parker, it's important for you to volunteer, to serve, to give your time, to help other people, and we drag him to things, and we force him into these opportunities, which sometimes you have to do, okay? But he doesn't develop that character of gratitude for what he has, of respect for other people, of compassion for those less fortunate, then we fail. If we say, buddy, you need to give your time and your efforts, and he does, and he signs up and he goes to things, but then he complains about it the whole time that he's there, and after he leaves, then we fail. See, I'm more interested in my son's heart than what he does. And I think God is too. And usually people's hearts are revealed when life is the craziest. Have you noticed that? When stress hits, when chaos hits, people's hearts are most easily revealed. Snap. They stress. They jump back to whatever used to be a comfort for them. They make quick judgments. They jump to fix things as quickly as possible, regardless of the outcome. But not Paul. Paul, when he's about ready to go to prison, he might be dead, he might be killed, he might be beaten within an inch of his life, and yet Paul says, "May I speak with you for just a moment?" "Excuse me, good sir," with the pointy stick and the funny helmet. "Could I have a word? May I please address this rioting crowd who was thirsty for my blood just a few minutes ago?" And I have this terrible thing. When I'm mad, I try and talk smart. Anybody else do that? Just me? Okay. Thanks. Now I feel lonely. No, when I get really mad, and my wife can attest, when I get mad, I start using bigger and bigger words in an attempt to make myself look better, I think. I'm still working through it. And yet Paul doesn't do that. Paul, this very educated guy, this very smart guy, this well-traveled guy who can speak multiple languages, as we just found out, he talks to the soldier in Greek and talks to the crowd in Hebrew or Aramaic. Instead of trying to be bigger and better than he is, even though he's in the right, he speaks to the crowd in Aramaic, in their language. He comes to their level. Let's take a look at what he says. The second life hack that Paul demonstrates is that he uses, I forgot about that quote. John Wooden said, Hall of Fame UCLA coach John Wooden, whose record-breaking teams once experienced a stretch of 88 wins and no losses, which is just incredible. John Wooden said, "Be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, while your reputation is merely what others think you are." Be more concerned with your character than your reputation. Because one is who you really are, and one is just what people think you are. The second life hack that Paul demonstrates is that he used his experiences. He used his experiences. Acts 22. Everybody still with me? You guys are a little groggy today. Acts chapter 22. He says, "Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense." When they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Then Paul said, "I'm a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city, in Jerusalem. Under Gamaliel, I was thoroughly trained in the law of our fathers and was just as zealous, just as passionate for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison, as also the high priest and all the council can testify. I even obtained letters from them to their brothers in Damascus and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished." So Paul is saying, look, guys, I was like you. I was passionate. I was fired up. I didn't like this whole Jesus movement. I persecuted the people who were part of it. I was brought up in Jerusalem. I feel like Jerusalem is kind of my home city, he says. He mentions Gamaliel, who was a very respected teacher in Jerusalem. So people would have heard Gamaliel and go, "Oh yeah, Gamaliel. Okay, yeah, he was my 4th grade teacher." So Paul's establishing these bonds that exist. He says, look, I was just as passionate, just as fired up as you guys are right now. He says, I even had a letter of intent to go to Damascus, all the way to Damascus, and arrest these rebels who were talking about this Jesus guy who they claim was the Son of God. Verse 6, about noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting, he replied. My companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go into Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been assigned to do. My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment, I was able to see him. Then he said, the God of our fathers has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. And now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, wash your sins away, calling on his name. When I returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking. Quick, he said to me, leave Jerusalem immediately, because they will not accept your testimony about me. Lord, I replied, these men know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Then the Lord said to me, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. So Paul shares this story, and if it sounds familiar, that's because you've already heard it. All the way back in Acts chapter 9, I believe it is, this incident is first recorded by Luke. This is the first time that Paul mentions it that we can tell. He brings up this kind of life experience of who he was, the event that changed everything. He met Jesus on Damascus Road. He saw Jesus' love and forgiveness and grace lived out through Ananias, who was a Jew, one of the men that Paul was probably there to arrest, who then called him brother, gave him a second chance. God granted him his sight, and everything changed. And then he also talks about what he's been called to do, how he got to where he is now. He said, God, Jesus, the Lord told me I need to go, and I didn't come to Jerusalem because God said that the Jews here wouldn't accept my testimony and that he was going to send me to the Gentiles. See, Paul didn't shy away from anything that he had experienced. I mentioned Brene Brown last week. Brene uses this phrase quite often. She says that you have to own your story. You have to own your story. All the ups, all the downs, all the in-between. Every messy, gory, stressful, uncomfortable detail. You have to own it. But most of us shy away from it, don't we? We shy away from all the difficult stuff, all the painful stuff, because it was painful. And nobody likes pain. We like to try and avoid that. Or we try not to wrestle with those emotions at all. We just bury them in hopes that nobody trips over them later. And yet Paul says, look, this is who I was. I was wrong. And I met Jesus and it changed everything. And now this is where I'm headed. See, you don't know what you have until you take inventory of it. Does anybody else have a refrigerator? I like to try and lay out these illustrations that everybody can relate to. Does anybody else have a refrigerator that eats all your food? Like, we can make this big meal and put it in the refrigerator and come back 20 minutes later and go, there's nothing to eat in here. Or our refrigerator is notorious for eating our sour cream. Like, we'll look in there, oh, no sour cream. Go to the store, get some sour cream, come home, go to put the sour cream in the fridge, lo and behold, sour cream. It needs a shave now, but it's sour cream. Yeah. Yogurt. Yogurt's a terrible thing because it's convenient enough. It fits in all the little nooks and crannies. I'm convinced there's a leprechaun or something inside of our refrigerator that hides our groceries after we put them in there. And then he puts them back out once we get groceries just to shame us. Like, oh, we need some yogurt. So we'll go get some yogurt. We come back, and there's like 4 yogurts from November. Where were those? So you have to take inventory of what you got so that you can use it. And if you never take the time to emotionally wrestle with all the ups and all the downs and how you got through them, then when you actually need to use them to benefit someone else, when you actually need to use them to help someone else, you won't have that in you. You just say, well, you'll just have to get through it. Or, I love this one. Well, I'm sure there's a reason that you're going through this. Really? So take inventory. Be genuine. Be vulnerable and honest about all the things in your life. Don't let parts of your story go to waste. The third life hack that Paul practices is that he used his mind. These are really profound, life-changing things that we're talking about. You've never heard this before, right? Use your manners, okay? Talk about what you've lived through, and use your head, okay? These are really difficult steps. They're simple, but difficult. He used his mind. Let's wrap it up. Acts chapter 22. If everybody's still with me, say yeehaw.
Yeehaw.
Okay, here we go. 22. So Paul says in verse 21, the Lord said to me, go, I'll send you far away to the Gentiles. Look at what happens in the very next verse. The crowd listened to Paul until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, rid the earth of him. He's not fit to live. So they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air. The commander ordered Paul to be taken into the barracks. He directed that he be flogged and questioned in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. It's just interesting, right? That Paul he's just laid out his journey so far. This is who I was. I met Jesus, everything changed. And now he's called me to go and be a light to the rest of the world, to the Gentiles. And the religious people, the Jews, their hearts were revealed. And those old feelings about those other people came bubbling out, didn't they? Apply a little bit of stress, a little discomfort, a little chaos in someone's life. Mix things up a bit and you'll see who they really are. And so as soon as the word Gentile was mentioned, all this hate and all this anger and all this rage about those half-breeds and those pagans and those heathens out in the world comes bubbling up, and the people get angry and they hulk up again and they say, get rid of Paul, he doesn't deserve to live. And so they order, he's going to be beaten and flogged. So what they would have done, the Romans, because they're trying to quell this, trying to satisfy the bloodthirsty crowd, they say, okay, we're going to flog him. So what they would have done is they would have stripped Paul down for the most part. They would have stretched him out, probably chained him to some sort of a post or something, and spread him out so that they could get the most flesh revealed for when they go to beat him. And what they would have beaten him with would have been a variety of things. It would have been very stiff reeds. They would have beaten him with leather whips. Sometimes they would have used a whip that had bits of bone or metal attached to it so that it could really dig in and tear its target. So there Paul is, chained to a post, about to have the bejeebers beaten out of him. And he says, verse 25, as they stretched him out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, the Roman soldier, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" The commander went to Paul and asked, no, I'm getting ahead of myself. When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported it. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "This man's a Roman citizen." The commander said, "Uh-oh." And he goes back to Paul and he says, "Are you a Roman citizen?" And Paul says, "Yes, I am," he answered. Then the commander said, "I had to pay a big price for my citizenship." Paul says, "I was born a citizen." Those who were about to question him withdrew immediately. The commander himself was alarmed when he realized that he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains. See, in the midst of chaos, Paul used his mind. He kept calm, kept level-headed. He was wise. Meanwhile, the crowd, they lose theirs. But Paul, even though he's about to be beaten by Romans, he says, "Hey, now I'm thinking about it. Is it legal for you to beat a Roman citizen like this, even without a trial?" He knows the answer. Now, for those of you who don't know a whole lot about Roman citizenship, you could become a Roman citizen in a couple different ways. The easiest way to become a Roman citizen is if you're born into it. Let's say mom and dad are both Roman citizens and you are brought into this world, a bouncing baby boy or girl, you would become a Roman citizen and you would have all the rights of your father. So, socially speaking, if your dad was a patriarch or a plebeian or higher up in the social class, you would share his social class. You could also purchase citizenship, but not the way that you're thinking. It's not about handing a big pile of money over. See, Rome was this huge empire who conquered everybody. And when they would come to your town to conquer your village, they would give the soldiers a choice. You can die in battle, or you can become a part of the Roman army. And so, if you wanted to become a part of the Roman army, if you wanted to become a Roman citizen, you could serve as an auxiliary troop for about 20 years or more. After that 20-year period, then you would be considered a full-fledged Roman citizen. So it's interesting that Paul leans over to this Roman soldier and says, "I'm a Roman citizen." And the commander says, "Well, I had to pay a big price for my citizenship." Perhaps that commander means he had to serve in the military under Rome's rule. Paul said, "Well, I was just born into it." And they let him go. Now, here's some rights of a Roman citizen, just real fast. I know government interests you all. So here we go. Here's one right, okay? Citizens could appeal from the magistrates, the leaders, to the people, and the persons who appealed could in no way be punished until the people determined the matter. But they were chiefly secured by the assistance of the tribunes. So that's what Paul was talking about here. It's not legal to beat me up, okay? None but the whole Roman people could pass sentence on the life of a Roman citizen. No magistrate could punish him by stripes or capitally. The single expression, "I am a Roman citizen," checked their severest degree. So all you had to say was, "I'm a Roman citizen." And it stopped everything. Another right that they had was that Roman citizens could not be sentenced to death unless they were found guilty of treason. And if they were accused of treason, then Roman citizens had the right to be tried in Rome. Meaning, if they were found to be traitors to the nation of Rome, then they could request that they go to the highest level of government and be tried there. Which is interesting, because if you've ever read through the book of Acts, that's what Paul's going to do. Spoiler alert. And this last one I find interesting as well. No Roman citizens could be sentenced to die on the cross. Roman citizens were not crucified. They were beheaded. Jesus, of course, was not a Roman citizen. So in the midst of chaos, when life got crazy, as he's about to be beaten, bless you, Paul kept his head. You ever notice how quickly smart people can go dumb? We were at a concert on Friday night, and the speaker that night said this. He said, "We're all one step away from stupid." Think about it. All it takes is one dumb decision. And it doesn't matter how much schooling you have. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter what your name is. It doesn't matter how many letters follow that name. We're all one step away from stupid. All it takes is for us to lose our heads. All it would have taken for Paul was to lose his head, and he very well could have lost his head. And yet Paul was not interested in knowledge because he had that before Jesus. He was more interested in wisdom. He was more interested in being level-headed. Because wisdom and level-headedness, it doesn't rock with the boat. It doesn't freak out, scared to death. But it says, no, we'll be all right. Let's just think this through. And they let Paul go. And this would begin a series of events that would change the course of church history forever. But that's life, right? It's a series of opportunities to take every thought captive, to use your heads. It's a series of opportunities, next slide, to share and live out the good news of Jesus. That's life. You want to know what a Christian's made of? Put them in a situation where they have to use their manners. You want to know how deep a Christian is? Ask them about their most painful experiences. You want to know how wise a Christian is? Watch them and how they use their heads in the midst of chaos. Does what they say and what they speak and what they live out and what they exude in difficult times, does that glorify God? So there are your life hacks. Pretty simple. You need to be kind. Rewind. You have to own your story. You've got to keep your head. And then you'll have plenty of opportunities to share and live out the good news of Jesus. And that's something that we all should be striving to do better. Let's pray. God, we thank you for who you are, what you've done. We thank you for this day, this moment, where maybe some of us here are in the middle of the storm. We're in the middle of the chaos, and it seems like everybody's yelling and everybody's screaming, and we just don't know what to do or how to do it, and we need your help to still be kind and respectful and grateful and humble. God, maybe you've lined us up with all these different experiences in life, and you saw us go through these, and you've helped us through them, and to face them, and to wrestle with them. And there's somebody coming down our path, there's somebody coming into our life that is going to need us to be bigger, need us to be stronger, need us to be honest about the difficulty that we've gone through, so that we can come alongside them and help them go through it. Father, help us to own our story. And God, when life gets messy and life gets crazy and it's easy for us to go dumb, give us wisdom. Give us clarity to make the wise choice rather than the emotional one, rather than the impulsive one, so that we may share and live out the good news of your Son, Jesus Christ, that changed the life of a man named Paul and led to the explosion of your church all across the world. We thank you for Jesus. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.